Hello, welcome to Gardener's World. Well, Nigel's back. He's feeling much better, thank you. Having a little snooze at the moment, but he's generally good and perky. This is a plant called Lysimachia bougley. Now, I've not grown it before because it does like plenty of sun and good drainage, and there aren't many places in this garden where that's true. But here in the dry garden, it's done really well. And you can see they're just touches of the flower colour, which, as the name suggests, are wine-coloured. The problem with Lysimachia bougley is that it's a very short-lived perennial, and you're lucky to keep it going for more than 2 or 3 years. So I'm looking to propagate it, and the best way to do that is to collect seed. The seeds are in these bubbles. Rather than collect them individually, I think the easiest way to do it is just cut off one of these flower spikes and pop it into an envelope. And the rule of thumb when collecting any seed is not to use plastic, but a brown paper bag or envelope is ideal. If I just cut that like that, that's got a few dozen seeds in it. I can just pop that in there. If I label it and put it somewhere cool and dark and dry, and that will be absolutely fine when you're ready to sow it next March.
Now is a good time to plant fruit, and this week Carol is helping our new gardeners, Dom and Dan, to introduce fruit into their borders.
No fruit garden would be complete without a few apples.
Rachel began this year determined to establish a cut flower garden. We join her as she got things started back in spring.
The plan is to fill these raised beds with glorious colour, but the main thing is to have something to cut right the way through the year.
And I shall be planting up a couple of pots for winter colour, one for sun and one for shade. This is what we call the writing garden because they sometimes come and write in that shed. And it's planted up almost exclusively with white flowers. Now, to some extent, it's been very successful and I've had huge pleasure from it. But to be honest, it was better last year, its first summer, than it has been this year. Now, part of that is because we had that very cold August and then we've had a bone-dry September. And that combination hasn't done it any favours. And there's too much shade. The apple trees, and particularly that hedge, make things struggle. So I'm going to lower that hedge in the winter. So I'm planning for next year. And one of the things I'm doing is planting bulbs. And today I want to put in some Camassias. Camassia lineae alba. And they come from North America. They make quite big bulbs. And they grow in their native region in wet meadows. They like heavy soil, but if you've got light sandy soil or chalky soil, you may have trouble. But in a border with lots of goodness, if it's fairly damp, it's worth giving them a go. I'm going to try and use a bulb planter. Bulb planters don't always work in a border because the soil can be too soft. But if it's firm, then it's a great way of planting. The idea is you take out a plug of soil and leave a good hole. Always plant pointy end up so that the shoot grows on up and the roots grow on down. Pop it in. And then when you make your second hole, the theory is it pushes out the soil from the first one. And what's interesting here is you can see how the basic soil is heavy clay. But the mulch that I put on last year and this year is beginning to work in. And then you put this back in the hole of the first one and cover it up. And just pop it over. If you can't get worse, I was about to plant an apple there. I reached down to pick that up and I would have popped it in and who knows, an apple tree might grow, or perhaps not. They will flower round about April to May, depending where you live. Tall flowers that grow up. And the key thing is, like all bulbs, don't cut, tie or tidy the foliage at all until it's totally disappeared. Now, as well as being a really good time to plant bulbs in the garden, it's also a good time over the next month or so to plant fruit of all kinds. And Carol has paid another visit to our new gardeners, Dan and Dom, and is helping them to make their garden good and fruity.
Dan and Dom have spent the year creating a garden that's perfect for their family. They've sown seeds, taken cuttings and created beautiful borders. Since my last visit, they've also added new plants to help extend the season. And they've put up some wire supports on their fences. Because today we're extending their edibles. We're focusing on fruit. Your garden is looking fantastic.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks. I brought you a fig.
It's gorgeous.
Because I know you're really keen on growing some fruit.
We've always wanted to grow fruit, I think.
We've never really
Put the
felt that
roots
we've
down.
been in one place long enough to actually justify it.
It's all about permanence, isn't it? Because they're going to grow with your family and, you know, they're always going to be there. Now, I know you bought these two wonderful containers here. So you're going to grow a plum in this first one.
Yeah.
Usually you grow plums in the ground, but providing you water it well during the summer, it's growing you really good stuff, and you feed it maybe once a week during the growing season, I think you'll get a wonderful, bountiful crop.
Okay.
But this fig's going in the other one.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
It's a brown turkey fig. It's the hardiest.
Good.
The whole idea is to restrict its root growth. So growing it in a container is perfect. They come from hot, dry, sunny places. So you've done all the right things. Holes in the bottom of the container.
Yeah, roots underneath.
So it's going to drain really well. And figs, if you think about where they come from, they don't need rich, fertile soil. In fact, that will produce excessive green growth, and what you're after is this fruit.
It's covered in fruit now. Is that something that we can eat?
They're never going to ripen.
Okay.
With a bit of luck next year, these tiny little embryonic figs will make next year's fruit and you'll be able to feast on them. But I think we should take all these bigger ones off because they'll never overwinter. Shall we get some soil?
Split up. Yeah, let's get going.
Look at that. Fantastic
Looks
root
good.
system. Make sure it's nice and firm.
Last one.
How's that?
Just amazing.
This wonderful nursery bed, it's been fantastic, hasn't it?
Yeah.
But I think now's its time to sort of change its persona a bit and become part of your fruit garden. There's already lots of muck in there. You've got more too.
Yeah.
And I think you ought to go for blackcurrants and rhubarb.
I love rhubarb, homegrown rhubarb. It's just amazing.
They'll live happily in the same bed because they both demand the same sort of conditions. Rich, fertile soil, preferably damp. Absolutely ideal here. So where shall we put them? This is one called Big Ben, and it needs plenty of room. You want to plant them deep. The reason for planting them deep is so that they're constantly producing new stems,
Right.
because they'll flower and fruit on those new stems. With your rhubarb, you want to make them level.
Okay. Found them somewhere?
Victor is a lovely old-fashioned variety, incredibly reliable. And this raspberry red, is
Raspberry
it?
red, yeah.
Should have wonderful pink stalks. But right now we want some muck. Shall we go and get it?
Yeah.
Get cracking. Now, no fruit garden would be complete without a few apples. And this is your east-facing fence.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Not all fruit would grow here, but they definitely will.
We'd spoken originally about espalier,
Yeah.
but you thought cordons were definitely better here.
Well, an espalier is one with a central trunk, arms out to the side, right the way
Very
up.
dramatic looking, yeah.
But A, it takes ages to train it in that way. B, you can only grow one variety.
Right.
This way, with cordons, you'll be able to grow a whole range of different apples. That's James Grieve. It's a beautiful eating apple, or you can cook with it. And then this one's Sunset. It's very prolific, easy to grow. This is Laxton's Superb, which lots of people really love. And although they will all flower at much the same time and pollinate each other, you'll be able to harvest them at different times. And we've even got one here that you'll be able to store till Christmas too.
Fantastic.
Red Falstaff.
So, what's involved in cordoning? What is a cordon?
The whole point about a cordon is it's a single stem with lots and lots of little side shoots. And you grow them at an angle too, which means that instead of making huge extension growth and heading for the sky, that also induces these side growths, which are the most fruitful.
So they should never get to full apple tree that you think of size.
No, but also they're on dwarf rooting stock.
Right.
So that will also keep them, you know, on the smaller side.
So are they quite intensive in terms of pruning and maintenance?
They're a cinch. All apples are really easy to prune. You'll just have to reduce these spurs on the new growth at the end of the summer. Take it back to 2 or 3 buds up here. This will induce the plant to make this framework of little short spurs, and it's on those spurs that you'll get fruit. Just want to lower it down. That feels right, doesn't it, that sort of angle? But this is a really important bit initially. You've got to make sure that this bit is flush, level with the soil at the side. Well, I think that looks really good. You can just imagine it living there forever. But we better get these other ones in too.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Beautifully planted, if I might say so. It's perfect. Next time I'm here, we'll be celebrating the wonderful year we've had. And I'll be helping Dan and Dom get their beautiful garden ready for winter.
Now, in the background, you can probably hear the roar of the machinery of a local farmer harvesting his maize, which will predominantly be as a cattle feed. Now, maize, exactly the same plant as sweet corn, just different varieties. He wants his dried up and chopped up. We want this succulent and sweet. And that means harvesting it at the right moment. The easiest way to tell is from the beard. When it's dyed and wispy like this, it's a pretty good sign that the sweet corn is ready. But you can see that here is one that is still pale, it's still got some life in it. So the cob will not be ready. If you look here, if you open it out, you'll see that these are succulent. There is liquid in those and they're ready to eat. Now, the great thing about sweet corn is to eat them as soon as you can. Just take that in, pop it in, boil it up, and then get some butter, slather it over, and munch into it. A month or so ago, my leeks were quite good. They were looking healthy, they were growing strong, all was well in the world of leeks. But since then, they've gone downhill pretty badly. And what's happened is that they've got rust. Now, rust is a fungus, and you notice it on leeks in particular, but you can get it on any allium, where you get these orange splodges that can widen out and, in fact, make the leaf look almost yellow. Having said that, it doesn't harm the plant as far as eating goes, and they are completely edible. So you can dig them up. There you go, perfectly good leeks. And all this affected part, I want to make sure it doesn't stay on the ground, burn them or get rid of them. But what's left behind should be perfectly delicious. Now, it's too late to sow leeks for this year, but not too late to get on with these jobs this weekend.
Now is the moment to plant autumn onion sets. You can plant them directly outside, but I like to plant them individually in plugs. And this is particularly good when the ground is too wet or there just isn't enough space for them. Bury each one just half deep in compost. They don't need any heat, but somewhere sheltered where they can start to sprout. They can be planted out in a few weeks' time or even next spring. Before winter comes, give your greenhouse a good clean. And as well as improving plant hygiene, It'll also keep the grass nice and clean to make the most of failing winter sunshine. All you need to use is some hot water and a little detergent. Then rinse it off and leave it to dry. If you have a bare patch on your lawn or grass path, there's still time to repair it by sowing seed. Give it a vigorous scratch with a wire rake, and then thinly sprinkle grass seed. And because the ground is still warm, it'll germinate fast, and then be ready to grow strongly next spring.
One of the great joys of growing flowers is being able to cut them to bring indoors. And I certainly try and do that as much as possible. So, for example, this dahlia, Rothsay Reveller, is really good because it produces a mass of blooms, particularly at this end of the year. So there are some to spare. But for the most part, particularly as the year begins to wane, if you have a really good arrangement of flowers in the border, you don't want to spoil it by taking some away to make a good arrangement indoors. It's one or the other. But this year, Rachel has set out to create a cut flower garden at her home in Oxfordshire. And she's kept a diary of her progress.
The UK has one of the best climates in the world for growing cut flowers, and the range and variety of blooms that will grow here is endless. Dahlias, sweet williams, gadetias, cornflowers, delphiniums, there really is a flower for all occasions. Whilst I believe passionately in encouraging cut flower growers in this country, I also think domestic gardeners can gain huge enjoyment from growing their own. After all, what could be nicer than gathering a bunch of homegrown flowers from your garden? So this year I set out to do just that, and I begin my cut flower garden diary back in March.
The plan is to fill 6 or maybe 7 of these raised beds with glorious colour. And I'm going to grow some things I know very well and others that are new to me, so it'll be a little bit experimental. But the main thing is to have something to cut right the way through the year. It's really important to get rid of as many of these weeds as we can now, because in fact, these are just flowering. So if I leave it much longer, they'll set seed, and then you'll get a whole load more weed seedlings. So the more I can do now before that happens, the better.
Once weeded, my next step was to add homemade compost for the worms to take down into the earth to create gorgeous, friable soil.
Yeah, now once the worst of the frosts have passed, I'm planning to direct sow hardy annuals into these beds. But in the meantime, there's an awful lot I can get started with.
Sweet peas must be one of the nation's favourite cut flowers. They smell gorgeous, they come in an array of colours and are very easy to grow. They can be sown directly into the soil outside in late spring, but you get much better results by starting them off in the greenhouse, either in the autumn or at the beginning of March.
I'm going to fill one of these module trays with these tubes here. And the reason for using these is that you've got that nice depth of compost in there. And sweet peas like to have a long root run. And I really like these tubes because once you've got your small plants, you can actually just put the whole thing in the ground. You don't need to take them out of the pot, and then it biodegrades in the soil. This is just a mix of ordinary seed and cutting compost, and then there's a little bit of soil-based seed and cutting compost as well, because I just think it makes that transition a bit easier when they go out into the open soil. Now, first one I'm going to start with is Cupani. It's just absolutely beautiful, and it's a very, very old variety, and it is also, I think, it's got the best fragrance. Just take your seed, pop them in, just one to each tube, and then it goes in just about ½ an inch down. A little sort of drizzle of compost. You don't have to have a greenhouse to do this. You just need somewhere that's nice and light and bright, so a windowsill will do, perhaps a porch, somewhere that's frost-free.
When I started this project, I was keen to have as much variety as possible in the beds with different sizes and textures. Cosmos are fabulous because they give you great daisy shapes which are very useful in arrangements. They're also extremely elegant because they have these lovely thin stems with feathery foliage, and so they were definitely next on my list. These seeds can be planted directly into modules in early spring, and there's no need to bury them like the sweet peas. Just place them carefully on the surface and give them a good dusting of compost.
There's one more seed I want to sow today, and for me, it's because they're the absolute showstoppers of the garden and they can make really good cut flowers, and that's dahlias. And I particularly love those singles that you get, things like Bishop of Llandaff. And this is actually a seed called Bishop's Children. They really are amazing, so beautiful. And from just these few seeds, very quickly, you get nice big plants with big fat tubers on them. I'll show you down here. Now, these little beauties have been overwintering under here. And just look at that. So these are the Bishop's Children a few years on. Next time, I'm going to be direct sowing out here, planting up the sweet peas. And it might be difficult to believe, but in about 3 months, this is all going to be a mass of colour. And I can't wait.
Now, of course, the garden does transform itself fantastically between the empty soil of March into the height of summer, but also the transformation back into winter needn't be completely bleak and emptying. You can manage it so you do have some colour. And I've got a letter here from Tony Nelson. I usually put pansies in pots for colour in the garden during winter months, and I was wondering if you could recommend any winter flower or plant alternatives during the winter months. You don't just have to use winter flowering pansies or violas, although I still think they're wonderful. There are simple things that you can do that bring the changes, and I've got just a few plants here which give me materials for a plant pot that you can have in full sun, in a south-facing position in winter, and also some plants that will thrive even in deep shade. Now, the full sun one first, that's why I've got the grit there. I've chosen plants that like really good drainage, and I've got a general purpose soil mix here, which has got quite a lot of leaf mould added to it. And then get a handful of grit like that, and mix it up in the pot, and just continue that process. The centre of this pot is going to be a rosemary, a variety called Miss Jessop's Upright. It does grow nice and upright and continues to do so, which makes it ideal for a pot because it doesn't swamp everything else. And there will be flowers, blue flowers in spring. I want to have some bulbs coming through, and I'm going to add these, which is an iris called White Caucasus. Very beautiful white flowers that come up quite early, February time. And there's just got a slight fragrance too. And we'll pop these in around the outside, like that. Cover those up. And then around the edge of the pot, I'm going to plant a sedum. Now, this little sedum is Fouldinglut, and it retains its colour and its foliage throughout winter. Now, what is really important is this doesn't sit in a sodden puddle all winter. Give it the sunniest position you can, and the bulbs will start to appear around about January time and flower for you in February, and it will still look good and go on looking good all summer. You've got a shrub, you've got perennial plants and bulbs. This can stay in here for years if need be. Now I'm going to do a pot for that shady position that you look out on but doesn't get a lot of winter sunshine. Same size pot, But I've got a different potting mix, which is leaf mould. This is ideal potting compost, particularly for plants that like to retain a little bit of moisture and like a nice loose root run. Use it mixed in with a peat-free proprietary compost and a little bit of grit. Now my central plant is a fern. This is Polysteichum sativarium Herrenhausen, and it's got lovely delicate fronds. Very beautiful green, it's evergreen. So it's going to stay looking good all winter. Now this is cyclamen coum. And those of you who know your cyclamens will be wondering why it's in flower. Because normally, cyclamen coum comes into flower around about Christmas time, and then flowers January, February, and into March. You wouldn't expect them to flower until later on. Of course, it'd be nice to have a bigger pot and I get more plants in. But this at least means you can move it around, and also the cost difference is really much more once you get to a bigger pot. Whereas a pot this size, in terms of plants, will cost you about £40 by the time you've got your fern, you've got your cyclamens, and also the third element that I'm going to put in, which are erythroniums, the dog's tooth violet. And the reason why they're called the dog's tooth violet is because the bulbs look remarkably like a dog's tooth. In fact, let's put it to the test. Nige, come here. Come here. Up. Come on. Right. There's a dog's tooth. Yours are cleaner and nicer and whiter. You've got beautiful teeth. Good boy. And they should be planted shallow, just below the surface. So I'm going to pop them in between the cyclamens. Like that. Okay, that's as many as I can fit in. A little bit of soil over the top. And although we've got some colour now, we would expect in January time all these cyclamen to be full of colour. So we've got 2 pots for winter. They're going to give us colour, they're going to give us form, and also they're going to give us some fragrance too. But they will not be happy growing side by side. One of them will be in the wrong place, so I need to find 2 places where they'll both thrive. That will be fine. All winter there, under the shade of these trees, and now I just need to find a place for the sunny pot. But that's it for this week. Bye-bye.